Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at this book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And, even just glancing at some of the excerpts that you sent over, I have to ask, is this a guide to, actually getting rich, or is this like a motivational, self-help book?
It's kind of both, don't you think? I mean, Hill was writing this during the Great Depression, so you can imagine people were, really looking for any kind of hope they could find. But his philosophy wasn't just about like money and riches. It was about like, really using the power of your mind to really achieve success in any area of your life.
Okay, so more than just a get-rich-quick scheme. I mean, he lays out these 13 principles for making money. And right off the bat, he starts with this idea of burning desire. He tells this story about this guy, Edwin C. Barnes, who wanted to work with Thomas Edison so badly that he took a really low-level job at his company just to get his foot in the door. I mean, talk about dedication.
Barna's story is like the perfect example of what Hill's talking about. I mean, this guy wasn't just sitting around hoping for success. He had this like burning desire, this thing that fueled all of his actions and all that persistence that he had, that ultimately paid off.
I mean, Hill even uses the phrase, burned all bridges behind him. Like, Barnes was so committed to this goal that there was no turning back. Like, that's intense. And that kind of leads us to Hill's principle of faith. Now, I don't think he means faith in like a religious sense, but like this belief in yourself, like that you can achieve what you set your mind to.
He describes faith as like as a state of mind and something that you can cultivate through things like affirmations and positive thinking. And he even uses a story from his own life to demonstrate just how powerful this can be.
You're talking about the story of his son, right? His son who was deaf. And Hill was so convinced that his son could hear and speak that it became reality.
Exactly. It's a really powerful example of how our beliefs, they can shape our reality.
Okay, so we've got burning desire, we've got, unwavering faith. What else does Hill say we need to be successful?
Specialized knowledge. Hill really emphasizes how important it is to acquire knowledge in whatever field you've chosen. But he makes this distinction between, general knowledge and specialized knowledge.
So it's not just about like knowing a little bit about everything. It's about knowing a lot about the right things.
Exactly. He says that just having like a ton of information, that's not enough. It's about, acquiring knowledge that's really relevant to your goals and then applying it, in a strategic way.
He uses this great example of a grocery store salesman. During the Great Depression, this guy he was struggling, but then he learned bookkeeping, right? He came up with this unique system for it. Then he marketed his services in this really clever way, and boom, successful business.
Yeah, it's the perfect example of how, being resourceful and adaptable, that can lead to success, even in the toughest times.
Okay, all right. So we've got burning desire, we've got faith, we've got specialized knowledge. Now things are starting to get interesting. Hill talks about the power of imagination, and he calls it the workshop of the mind. And this is where we get to create, to envision our success.
Hill really highlights this principle with the story of Coca-Cola. Asa Candler, he just had this simple idea and a recipe. And by using his imagination, he turned it into this, global empire. It's a really powerful example of how just, our thoughts can become riches.
It's like he bottled up his imagination and sold it to the world.
That's a great way to put it.
Hill also introduces this concept called the mastermind. What is that all about?
This principle really emphasizes the importance of collaboration. Hill says that surrounding yourself with brilliant minds can amplify your own abilities.
He uses the example of Henry Ford. He was close with guys like Thomas Edison and Harvey Firestone, and they bounced ideas off each other. They challenged each other's thinking, and together they achieved these incredible things. It's like having your own like personal think tank.
Exactly. It's about, finding mentors, building a network of people who can inspire you, support you, and help you achieve your goals.
So build your dream team. Get those creative juices flowing. But before we move on, I have to ask about this next principle, sex transmutation. It definitely sounds a bit, well, let's just say it's a product of its time.
Yeah, Hill's views on sex transmutation are definitely controversial. And, it's important to remember, the context, the early 20th century when he was writing.
So basically he's suggesting that the energy, from sexual desire, that could be redirected into other more creative pursuits.
He even analyzes historical figures like Napoleon Bonaparte, arguing that their successes were fueled by, by the influence of love and romantic relationships.
It's definitely an interesting concept, but I think we can all agree that modern perspectives on sexuality and relationships are much more evolved. It's up to each individual, how they want to interpret and apply this principle.
Absolutely. Moving on to a principle that holds a lot more relevance today, Hill talks about, the power of the subconscious mind.
He uses this analogy of a garden, like a really fertile garden. He says that whatever seeds you plant in your subconscious, whether they're positive or negative, that they'll grow. So you gotta feed your mind with positive thoughts and beliefs.
This really aligns with, the concept of self-talk and affirmations, which are, they're so popular in personal development these days. Hill's point is that, our subconscious beliefs, they shape our reality.
And he even warns about, letting negative thoughts, letting them take root in your subconscious. Because that can sabotage all your efforts. So no doom scrolling before bed.
Exactly. Now, Hill takes this concept even a step further by introducing this idea of the sixth sense. And he calls it the faculty of creative imagination.
So he believes that this sixth sense can be developed, through practice, and that it allows you to access, knowledge and insights that other people can't see. It's like tapping into, this hidden source of wisdom.
He even cites the example of Dr. Elmer R. Gates. He was an inventor, and he had this special room in his house where he would go to tap into his creative imagination.
Sounds like my kind of place. But seriously, Hill's point is that, we can all access this creative power within ourselves.
Right. And then he kind of takes us on this journey into like the shadowy world of fear. And he outlines the six basic fears that can hold us back. And he says that the fear of poverty is like the most destructive of these fears, and that it stems from humanity's, inherent greed.
He even shares this firsthand account of a man's descent into poverty. And it really shows the psychological impact of financial hardship.
It's a stark reminder that fear, especially the fear of poverty, it can become like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we got to confront our fears head on and not let them control our lives.
Absolutely. And it's really relevant, today, when things are, a little uncertain economically. I mean, it can feel pretty overwhelming sometimes.
It's not just about money, though, right? That fear can, kind of seep into other areas of your life, too, like your self-worth, your relationships.
Exactly. Hill also talks about like the fear of criticism, which, I guess that comes from, our desire for approval, right? And our tendency to like conform to, social norms. And he argues that, this fear, it can really stifle our creativity and prevent us from really going after, our passions.
It's like we're trapped in a cage of our own making, afraid to step out and really be ourselves. I mean, he gives examples, like people staying in unhappy marriages or not pursuing, further education because they're afraid of what other people might think.
Yeah, those examples, they really show, how that fear of criticism can stop us from living, authentically. He encourages us to develop like a self-reliance, a strong sense of individuality, to overcome that fear.
That's easier said than done, I think. But his point is, we got to focus on what really matters to us rather than, letting the opinions of other people dictate our lives.
Exactly. Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit to another fear that can really impact our well-being. He addresses the fear of ill health, and he says that this fear can actually weaken our immune systems and make us, more likely to get sick.
It's almost like we're making ourselves sick. He talks about hypochondria, that tendency to like obsess over every little ache and pain and just like always anticipating, the worst.
Yeah, and he also points out, how this fear of ill health, it can lead to unhealthy behaviors, right? Like avoiding exercise or becoming, overly cautious. It's about finding that balance, between taking care of yourself and not letting fear, run your life.
Right. It's about being, proactive about your health without being consumed by anxiety. I mean, as we get older, another fear that, that kind of creeps in is the fear of old age. And Hill suggests that this fear, it stems from, the way we associate aging with decline and loss.
Yeah, he talks about how, how people they tend to slow down and develop like an inferiority complex as they age. It's almost like they're buying into this stereotype of what it means to be, old.
It's like we're accepting this pre-written script for our later years instead of writing our own.
Exactly, Hill. He challenges this whole notion you know, by highlighting all the wisdom and experience that, that come with age. He encourages us to embrace aging as, as just a natural part of life, a time for continued growth and fulfillment.
That's a really refreshing perspective, isn't it? I mean, instead of fearing the passage of time, we can see it as this opportunity for continued learning, for personal evolution.
Absolutely. And then of course there's the ultimate fear, right? The fear of death. And Hill, he acknowledges that, this fear it's really deeply ingrained in so many of us.
I mean, it's a fear that can really haunt us, throughout our lives. It can impact our choices, and even our sense of peace.
Hill actually takes like a surprisingly like, pragmatic approach to this fear. He says that instead of fearing death, we should accept it as just a natural part of life and focus on really living our lives to the fullest.
He even reminds us that our physical bodies, they're just made up of energy and matter, right? Which can be, transformed but not destroyed. So in a way, we continue on in some form.
That's a really thought-provoking idea. It aligns with certain spiritual and philosophical beliefs, about the nature of consciousness and the afterlife. But even if you don't subscribe to those beliefs, Hill's point is that death is, it's inevitable, right? We all face it.
So instead of letting fear, kind of paralyze us, we can choose to embrace life and make the most of, the time that we have.
Exactly. Now, here's the key to overcoming all of these fears. According to Hill, decisive action, he says, we do not worry over conditions once we have reached a decision to follow a definite line of action.
It's like taking action, it neutralizes the fear.
Precisely, Hill, he provides some specific strategies, for addressing each of these 6 basic fears. For example, he suggests, combating the fear of poverty by making a decision to be content with whatever wealth you can accumulate without worry.
So it's about, shifting your focus from scarcity to abundance, right? Finding peace of mind in your current circumstances while still striving for improvement.
Right. To overcome the fear of criticism, he advises, making a decision to just not worry about what other people think or do or say.
Oh, that's a tough one. But, it's about recognizing that other people's opinions, they don't have any power over us unless we give it to them. We can choose to focus on, our own values and beliefs.
Exactly. For the fear of ill health, Hill, he recommends making a decision to ignore symptoms and focus on positive thoughts.
Again, it's about, taking control of our minds and not letting fear, manifest into physical ailments.
To address the fear of old age, he encourages, embracing aging as a time of wisdom and understanding rather than, dwelling on potential limitations.
It's about, reframing our perspective on aging and seeing it as, a natural and valuable stage of life.
And for the fear of death, Hill's advice is to accept it as an inevitable event and focus on living a meaningful life.
It's about, making peace with the fact that our time on Earth is limited and using that awareness to make the most of each day.
Hill's philosophy is ultimately about empowering ourselves, to overcome fear and take control of our destinies. He provides a roadmap, for personal growth and achievement, and it's based on, understanding and applying these fundamental principles.
And as we navigate those uncharted territories of our minds, he offers us this really remarkable tool. He calls it the imaginary council. Now, this sounds intriguing.
Hill suggests, creating an imaginary council of wise individuals, either living or deceased people that you admire and respect.
So it's like your own personal dream team of mentors.
Exactly. Hill recommends, holding regular meetings with this council in your imagination and seeking their advice and guidance, on your goals and challenges.
He even shares how he used this technique himself. He formed an imaginary council with figures like Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. Talk about an all-star lineup.
Hill, he claims that through this practice, he was able to tap into this wealth of knowledge and inspiration, and that it helped him, achieve success in his own life.
Like, harnessing the collective wisdom of some of history's greatest minds. But how does this actually work? I mean, do we just sit there and imagine them, talking to us?
I know it might sound a little, unconventional, but the underlying principle is about, it's about consciously seeking inspiration and guidance from those that we admire.
So we can choose our own like personal board of advisors, drawing on the wisdom of those that we respect, even if they're, not physically present.
That's a great way to put it, and it ties in nicely with Hill's emphasis on, surrounding yourself with positive influences.
Right. And he doesn't just, stop at imaginary mentors. He actually dedicates a whole chapter to the 6 basic fears that can hold us back. Fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, old age, death.
And as you mentioned earlier, he did have some thoughts on the fear of losing love. Some of his language might feel a little dated now, but the underlying principle of confronting those fears head on is still incredibly relevant.
Right. He famously said action is the antidote to fear. It's not about, ignoring those fears, but understanding them and taking steps to overcome them. So we have to face our fears, build our dream team, and cultivate a powerful mind. Is there anything else he recommends for achieving success?
Oh yeah, he really emphasizes that, it's our thoughts that shape our reality. He has this great line, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve.
So it's not just kind of, wishing and hoping. It's about, actively cultivating this mindset, of success, really believing that you can achieve those goals.
Exactly. And of course, taking action consistently, toward those goals. Hill really stresses this idea that knowledge without action is useless. You gotta put these principles in the practice. He's basically giving a blueprint, but we have to build the house ourselves.
I love that. We can't just, sit back and wait for success to magically appear. We got to roll up our sleeves and get to work and use those tools and strategies that Hill, gives us. There's just so much in Think and Grow Rich about, the power of thought, the importance of belief, and taking action. It's amazing how relevant this book still is. I mean, it was written almost 100 years ago.
And, it's not just about, financial success, right? Hill's philosophy, it applies to, any area of life where you want to achieve something meaningful.
So whether you're aiming for, financial abundance, a fulfilling career, a loving relationship, or, personal growth, Hill's principles can help you get there. It's about, understanding them and applying them in your own life.
Right. As we wrap up our deep dive into Think and Grow Rich, I want to leave with a question. Which of these principles, really spoke to you? Which one are you going to, try and put into practice today?
I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. Choose one, commit to it and see what happens. Hill believed that we all have the potential for greatness, and he gave us this roadmap to help us unlock it.
Remember, you are the master of your destiny.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Think and Grow Rich. We hope you learned some valuable insights, to help you on your own journey to success.